All right, let's jump right in. I want you to picture this. An ancient king, somewhere in the Americas, around the 2nd century BCE. His name is King Benjamin, and he's climbing up this tall tower. But he's not up there to brag about his kingdom or his victories. No, he's about to deliver what you could call a technical manual for the soul. And right at the core of this whole thing is a really practical and kind of terrifying question. You know that feeling, right? When you've been forgiven and the slate is wiped clean? How do you keep it that way? How do you stop yourself from just mucking it all up again? I mean, it's a question that has kept people up at night for thousands of years. So, what's the answer? Well, King Benjamin's answer is it's not what you'd expect. It's got nothing to do with just gritting your teeth and trying harder. Instead, he lays out this incredible metaphor. He talks about divine hydraulics. Think of it like spiritual plumbing. Forgiveness isn't some static thing you get to own. It's a current, a flow that you have to tap into.
Okay, so before we can even get into the nuts and bolts of this system, we have to start with a really radical shift in how we see ourselves. And I gotta say, this first step, it might just be the hardest part of the whole thing.
You know, King Benjamin uses this word nothingness, and it sounds bad, right? But it's not about low self-esteem or feeling worthless, not at all. It's actually a very precise economic statement in a spiritual context. It means that, on our own, we have zero spiritual capital. We walk up to the divine negotiating table with a completely empty bank account. There's nothing to bargain with. And here's the logic, and it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. That breath you just took, according to this king, it was a loan. You don't own it. It's just lent to you, moment to moment. So if you don't even own your next breath, what in the world could you possibly offer in a negotiation? So this is the crucial takeaway. If everything good we have, forgiveness, grace, even life itself, is a loan to someone with nothing, then you can't just hoard it. You can't stuff it under a spiritual mattress. The only way to keep that divine loan fresh and active is to keep it moving. It's this wild paradox. You only get to keep it by constantly giving it away. Now, this all sounds great in theory, right? Just keep the good stuff flowing. But of course, it's not that simple. There's an obstacle. There's an enemy working against this whole system. And it's not out there somewhere. It's inside every one of us. Benjamin gives it a name, the natural man. And we're not just talking about our basic instincts. The real problem, the reason it's an enemy, is its operating system. Its entire logic is flawed. It's the part of our brain that believes in scarcity, that looks at something and screams, mine. It's the voice that wants to possess everything, our stuff, our achievements, and even our own salvation.
And what's so fascinating is that this idea pops up in other ancient belief systems too. Like in some forms of early Gnosticism, they saw a very similar split in the human psyche. You've got the natural man, the ego-driven self, that's all about ownership and scarcity. And then you have the saint, the spiritual self, who understands that everything is just a loan, a temporary trust. One is an owner, the other is a steward.
All right, so we've got the groundwork laid, right? We understand we start with nothing, and we have this internal enemy, the natural man that wants to own everything. So now we get to the cool part. Let's look at the mechanics of this divine hydraulic system. How does the flow actually work? Okay, here's the positive cycle, how you keep it all going. First, you connect to the source. Then, this flow of grace you absolutely did not earn, starts coming in. Now, here's the crucial third step. You have to pass it on. You impart of your substance, you give to others. And it's that act of giving that literally keeps the valve open, keeping the connection strong and the flow fresh. But look at what happens when the flow goes negative. It all starts with a single moment of refusal. You refuse to give. In the hydraulic system, that's like screwing a cap on the end of the pipe. And what happens to water in a capped pipe? It immediately stops moving. It goes stagnant. The spiritual pressure from the source is lost, and eventually the connection itself is just broken. Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. King Benjamin boils this entire complex system down to a single, powerful, real-world test. A test that pretty much all of us face, all the time. And here it is. You see someone in need, a beggar. And what's the first voice that pops into your head? It's the natural man, isn't it? That internal monologue kicks in. He probably deserves this. It's his own fault. That thought, right there, that's the switch. That's the moment you decide whether you're going to cap the pipe or let it flow. And the two paths couldn't be more different. When you judge the beggar, you're making a statement. You're saying, merit is what matters. And in doing that, you reactivate the logic of the natural man. And here's the kicker. You unconsciously cancel your own forgiveness because, remember, you didn't merit it either. But when you help the beggar, you're making a different statement. You're physically acknowledging the reality of unmerited grace, and that is what preserves your own connection. And then, just when you think you have it all figured out, Benjamin drops the rhetorical question that completely dismantles any sense of being better than anyone else. It's the ultimate equalizer. It makes the king on his tower and the person in the dust exactly the same. Because in this spiritual economy, what is everyone's starting balance? It's a big fat zero. We all start with nothing. When it comes to the divine, we are all beggars. Every single one of us is asking for a grace we didn't earn and could never possibly repay. So what does this all add up to? Well, it's not just a list of religious rules. It's a completely different way of thinking about what it even means to be saved. It's a total paradigm shift. So let's break down the key ideas. First, this whole paradigm pretty much rejects the idea of a one-and-done salvation. Instead, it's about continually being saved through the act of continually giving. And get this, charity isn't just a nice byproduct of salvation, it's the very mechanism that preserves it, which means you can't be spiritual in a vacuum. Your connection to God is directly and inextricably tied to your connection to your fellow human beings. And this all leads us to this beautiful central paradox. In this economics of emptiness, the laws of spiritual finance are completely flipped upside down. Hoarding your spiritual wealth leads to bankruptcy. The only way to get rich, the only way to retain your wealth, is to give it all away. So we end with this. This isn't just ancient history or abstract theology. It's a direct challenge. If this ancient king is right, if the flow of grace into our lives is directly dependent on the flow of compassion out of our lives, what does that change about how you see the world and the people in it when you wake up tomorrow?